Medics say heavy fighting between Israeli forces and Hamas has trapped patients and thousands of displaced people seeking refuge at a hospital in Gaza City. The Palestine Red Crescent Society said their emergency crews at Al-Quds Hospital are facing blackouts and intense shelling in the vicinity. And the UN's World Health Organization expressed alarm at the situation in Al-Shifa Hospital. Medical staff there say it has run out of water, food, and electricity. Israel said it had clashed with Hamas nearby, but had not fired on the hospital.
A newborn in Gaza. Her grandmother says they fled Al-Shifa Hospital following an attack, walking for hours to seek safety.
We fled the morning she was born. She and her mother didn't rest. She didn't even get breastfed. Our journey, it's a journey of torment.
The West Bank's health minister says dozens of babies are at risk of death in Al-Shifa.
The hospital of Shifa is the main hospital in Gaza Strip. It lacks oxygen, it lacks electricity, it lacks fuel. And also the Israeli occupation power is threatening the medical staff to leave there.
As Israel intensifies its operations in northern Gaza, it says doctors, patients, and thousands of displaced people who've taken refuge at hospitals must leave, saying Hamas militants are using the facilities as cover. Israel denies that its forces are attacking Al-Shifa Hospital. The World Health Organization says it's gravely concerned about the safety of those still inside the hospital.
Ahmed Al-Mandhari joins me from Oman. He is the regional director for the World Health Organization. Thank you so much for speaking to us again. What are your colleagues in Gaza telling you about the situation at Al-Shifa Hospital today?
Thank you very much, Claire, for giving me the opportunity. We are getting reports from our office there in Gaza that they have not really managed, to get any communication for the last 24 hours with the teams there in Al-Shifa Hospital. But according to the reports, there are still attacks of the hospital building and the surrounding of the hospital, which led, for example, the last attack last night, led into casualties and deaths among those people who sheltered themselves in that hospital, as well as damaging the ICU with one patient died who was under ventilator. And the service is really collapsing there because of the lack of the fuel, as well as because of the direct attacks, of some of the buildings there. There is no clean water to run the services, as well as no electricity. They are operating on torches, they are operating with no anesthesia, and they are really facing a very bad situation there in the hospital.
Now, the Israeli military says that there's been a lot of misinformation coming out of Gaza. I'd like to take a listen to what their spokesperson, Tania Krämer, said last night about Al-Shifa Hospital. Dr. Al-Mandhari, it would be great if you could listen in with us, and I'd like to get your thoughts on what he says in just a moment.
There is no siege, I repeat, there is no siege on the Shifa Hospital. The east side of the hospital is open on El-Wadi Street for the safe pass of Gazans who wish to leave the hospital. We're speaking directly and regularly with the hospital staff. The staff of the Shifa Hospital has requested that tomorrow we will help the babies in the pediatric department to get to a safer hospital. We will provide the assistance needed.
Dr. Al-Mandhari, can you confirm what the IDF is saying there? Is there safe passage out of Al-Shifa Hospital for those who wish to leave?
There are a few points that I'd like to reiterate and re-emphasize on. In fact, based on all UN agencies and as well as credible non-UN agencies, there is no place safe in Gaza. All places in Gaza are under direct attacks by the Israeli forces. All healthcare facilities, are under attack by the forces as well, and the surrounding of these facilities. Evacuating patients from the hospital is like issuing a death certificate, because first of all hospitals are, partially functioning. Those hospitals which are still functioning, partially functioning, these hospitals are suffering from, severe shortage of medical supplies severe shortage of fuel with no electricity and no clean water. And in addition to that, the bed capacity in the remaining hospitals is reaching 180% of their normal bed capacity. So there is no place at all for even one single bed to receive a patient. Number two, patients in Al-Shifa hospital, especially those under, ventilators, and especially children, it is really like issuing premature death certificate for them, because it is not possible to move them from, the machines, keeping them alive. The place, or the roads are not safe. And in fact, some of those people who fled the hospital, the civilians, were under attack. So I don't know on what basis, Israeli forces is saying they are communicating with the staff in the hospital, asking them to evacuate. It is unfair to evacuate tens of patients from this hospital.
So you're describing a very dire humanitarian situation. But just to make clear, from what the IDF has said, that there is no siege of Al-Shifa Hospital. Is the World Health Organization also able to confirm that people who are able in a position to leave can actually get off the premises?
There is no way to get, patients or staff or even those who are sheltering themselves in the hospital to leave the hospital because of the insecurity and direct attacks of the surrounding of the hospital. And this report, in fact, it is not only WHO report, it is report of all UN agencies, including MSF, including, Red Crescent, Red Cross reports. So it is not just UN reports or Minister of Health official reports.
Okay. Thank you so much for speaking with us. As always, that's Dr. Ahmed Al-Mandhari from the World Health Organization. Many thanks. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We're joined by DW's Tania Krämer in Jerusalem. For more now, Tania, medical staff in Gaza's hospitals are describing Al-Shifa Hospital as under bombardment. Can you tell us more about what is happening there?
Well, this is what we're getting from reports from Gaza. Obviously, there are residents still in the area and from the medical staff, through phone calls telling what is going on right now there at Shifa Hospital. They're saying there has been heavy bombardment, airstrikes in the area, in the vicinity of the hospital, Al-Shifa, the largest hospital in Gaza, where you said, many residents of Gaza had also thought they will be safe in the compound of this hospital. But now, medical staff and the directors there of the health officials saying that basically Al-Shifa hospital is shutting down. They're starting to lose patients. They cannot provide the services anymore. We also hear that from other hospitals in the north. And WHO said they're very worried about the situation. They have grave concerns about what is going on, that they had lost contact to their focal points at Shifa Hospital. Also, we're hearing this from Doctors Without Borders, MSF. They also have staff in the hospital, calling for the protections of those hospitals. Now, the Israeli army has said they're confirming there's fighting going on in the vicinity of the hospital, that they're not targeting the hospital itself, although the army has always said that they are allegedly, command centers of the armed groups underneath the hospital. That's why this hospital is such a focus for the military. But of course, this situation also means for patients or for people in the north of Gaza, with all these hospitals being, where there's a lot of fighting going on, that they have no place to go to in need if they're in need of help.
They're describing a dire situation indeed. And Tania, I want to ask you about some news coming out of Israel. Israeli media reporting progress in a deal to free some 240 hostages believed to be held in Gaza. It's been about 5 weeks since their abduction, and little is known about their fates. We're going to come back to Tania in just a moment, but first, this report.
They want action. Across Israel, thousands of protesters took to the streets on Saturday. They want their government to secure the quick release of hostages abducted by Hamas on October 7th.
I don't think any other country in the world would have that. Women, children, babies, civilians, innocents who are being kept as hostages in Gaza right now. And for 35 days, not one person from the Red Cross has been allowed to visit with them and let us know that they're okay and give us a sign of life from any of them.
At another, much smaller demonstration, a group of Israeli activists called for an end to the war in Gaza.
We come here to ask for ceasefire. I think this is right now the only demonstration of mainly Jewish Israelis who are asking to stop the massive bombarding of Gaza, to stop the ongoing transfer in the West Bank, and to start finding peaceful solutions for the situation.
In the past couple of weeks, using this war, the government has taken power into its own hands and disallowed any form of protest against the indiscriminate killing of civilians in Gaza and against the war, and working towards a solution. Today we are here to protest also against that.
Demands for a ceasefire have been growing from citizens across the world and also from world leaders. On Friday, French President Emmanuel Macron said there was no justification for the civilian casualties in Gaza and called on Israel to stop its bombing.
And day after day, what we saw is a permanent bombing of civilians in Gaza.
Those remarks have not gone down well with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Regarding French President Macron, I think he did good things. He came here, he sent a floating hospital. It's good. But if you're asking me about Macron's remarks, he made a severe mistake. It was a factual mistake and a moral mistake. It is Hamas, not Israel, preventing the civilians' evacuation. Israel is telling them to leave.
While Israel's leadership is adamant that it's not changing its strategy, there are many voices at home who believe a ceasefire in Gaza may help bring back the hostages.
So let's come back to Tania Krämer in Jerusalem. Tania, as we've heard, Israeli media reporting that dozens of hostages could soon be released under a possible deal. Can you give us any further details there?
Well, basically, these were reports in Israeli media that came up on Saturday night. They're talking about a possible deal that might be on the table, but nothing is confirmed here. These were all unsourced reports saying that a deal could include up to 80 hostages, among them women, elderly, and the children that are being held in Gaza. They could be exchanged in return for women, Palestinian women prisoners that are held in Israeli prison, as well as Palestinian minors that are held in Israeli prisons. But again, nothing has been confirmed of that sort so far. But, hostage negotiators are saying, or sources close to them, that they need a ceasefire for that, to move those hostages, to get them out of Gaza, at least a short-term ceasefire. But we're also hearing again in a press conference by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he said again that there would be no ceasefire unless all the hostages are basically released. So we have to wait and see what's going on there behind closed doors, whether there is a breakthrough. Qatar is working on that as one of the mediators, Egypt. So we have to wait and see if there's a breakthrough in the coming days.
And this all taking place as on Saturday we saw protests across Israel calling for the hostages' release. What are these demonstrators asking of the Israeli government?
Well, I think it's a very frustrating and very worrying situation for many families and the relatives of the hostages. They are coming out in the past weeks. They came out on several locations across Israel, just reminding the government it's so important to keep this on the agenda. The government is saying, and the army as well, it's one of their priorities, obviously, to bring the hostages back home. But families are worried about the fact that Israel is pushing ahead with a ground operation in Gaza, and that might harm the hostages that are being held in Gaza, and they're demanding more action, more information from the government to bring the hostages home.
Tania, thank you very much for that. That's DW's Tania Krämer reporting from Jerusalem.